Hi, this is Myrna, and I'm going to present on my macro activity. So I'm doing my internship at a school district, and I'm working in the attendance and behavior and truancy department, which we call intervention services. Um, so here's my first slide. And what we decided to do, I talked to my task supervisor, and she wanted to work on changing the district attendance policy, which just wasn't very up to date. They wanted to encompass best practices and to address chronic absence, which is the direction the whole state is going in. And that's rather than counting unexcused absences. They'll still keep that data, but wanting to address chronic absence. The other problem with the policy was that it was unclear the number of days the schools would use as a guide before addressing attendance concerns. So what we did was determine our team to start out, and then to build a committee in the district of different representatives from schools to work on this need, and created, a timeline for getting this done. Our goal was to begin in January and have it in place by the end of this first semester so that it can be used for next school year in 2017-2018. So the current attendance policy, like I said, doesn't address chronic absence, which is attendance falling below 85%. And we also wanted to be clear about the number of days that schools needed in order to take action. So for the M, mustering support and formulating an action system, we decided to review what is the current policy, research attendance, and because the intervention services department has been working on this for a while, they had some good information about that. We met with the intervention services team, proposed the changes, and determined who the district stakeholders would be that we would invite to come together for the committee. We wanted people from every level, elementary, middle, and high school. Also, folks from the health services department. They deal a lot with illness and 504 plans. So obviously attendance falls into that. And we wanted to move the focus from those unexcused absences and focus more on the lost instructional time that impacts the academics of the students. This current policy wasn't allowing us to address those things. I mean, of course we can, but we didn't have teeth. So that was the idea to begin. Once we did all these things, we came up with the committee, and we wanted to brainstorm with them about the changes we wanted to make. So we incorporated the proposed changes that we wanted to make, and the plan was to submit that to the legal department. They then made the changes tentatively that we wanted, and we my supervisor and I had to present to Policy Council, which is a committee of different stakeholders in the district, like board members, principals, teachers, students, and parents in the district, who gave us feedback. And they're the folks who oversee this every year at the school district, and they meet 4 times a year. We met with Policy Council and then revised the suggested changes and feedback from Policy Council. They did have a few things, that we hadn't thought about. It was good to have another group of eyes looking at this, and then submitted the final version to the legal department. What I would identify as the assets that we had are the personnel who were willing and able to devote their time to working on this change. I think that it benefits all of us, so luckily that worked in my favor. The committee members were very helpful in bringing up some things, because we're not in a school, a specific school, we're in all the schools, but bringing up a lot of the things that registrars deal with, assistant principals and deans. And then the other group that really helped us out was Policy Council. So our specific goals and objectives were to revise the current superintendent's policy to encompass best practices in chronic absence, which is attendance falling below 85%, and the current policy being unclear about the number of days a school would use before taking some sort of action. So, yay, implementation of the plan will take effect for the 2017-2018 academic school year. We were able to come to an agreement on many of the changes. Most of them were adopted as is. There were a few that we had to change. We decided to make 5 days the starting point for schools to begin to take action. This is something that many of our high schools were already doing, but it wasn't in policy. So elementary and middle school weren't doing that. So a parent can excuse up to 5 days. After the 5th absence, documentation needs to be given to the school, such as a doctor's note or proof that they had a family emergency of some sort. Another thing that we did was, obviously for high schools and middle schools, the students have different periods, so they are tardy after 10 minutes. But that was also the same amount of time that was being used in elementary school. And in elementary, they only have 2 periods. They have the morning and the afternoon. So that was revised to be 60 minutes for a tardy, or leaving 60 minutes early from class. So after we presented to Policy Council, we took their changes and met with the general counsel of the school district and kind of put together everything. Right now, we're almost done. We met with him last week, and we just want to change some wording that we're using to match what the Colorado Department of Education is doing. And we want to do that so that we have, you know, the most up-to-date information in there, and we're not having to do this again. And then also, children under the age of 5 aren't subject to the same rules for truancy as students between the ages of 5 and 17, and also students over the age of 17. So we want to find a way of, although we can't begin truancy proceedings against those folks, but still capturing the spirit of why we want those students to have good attendance. So here's more about that. A parent can excuse 5 days per semester without documentation. And then the 10-minute tardy across the board for all students versus 10 minutes for secondary and 60 minutes for elementary. So that was something that was new to the policy. So in evaluating the progress, I think that this policy will provide school staff with clear expectations of parents and students regarding attendance. And what's good about that is that it's consistent throughout the school district, hopefully within a couple years, because it won't probably happen immediately, although we are going to try to train registrars in the fall about the new process. But hopefully after this next school year, we will have a more consistent process to use throughout the school district. So that's the end of my PowerPoint. I would just like to say this was a really interesting process. I never pictured myself working on macro practices. I'm more like the individual person wanting to work like micro or meso. But this was just really, really cool. I mean, when I tell people that I worked on it, they're just really surprised. I think people who've been in the district a long time haven't necessarily participated in something like this. So I really got to maybe not do a lot of the talking, although I did do some talking throughout these different events that we had, but a lot of planning behind it, which I found to be pretty enjoyable and like up my alley. So that is my presentation. Thank you for watching.